Everyone, welcome to this week's UE Cyber Seminar session. We are delighted to welcome Craig Porter, who's joining us all the way from Las Vegas this week. So we are very, very honored to have an international speaker this week. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning for Craig, whereas it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon for us. Craig is a senior account executive at OpenText Inc. and is going to be talking to us about digital forensics. So you've seen the abstract, you've seen the bio. Craig has a very interesting background, so I'm really, really excited and really pleased to welcome him to this week's session. So with that said, over to you, Craig.
Thank you so much, Phil. It's a great introduction. I appreciate it very much. It's such a different feeling now that I've retired from the FBI and I'm now dealing with digital forensics and trying to help universities as I can. It's actually a very good feeling, and I'm glad to be here with you all tonight, I guess, in your time, this evening. And so thank you for joining us or for listening later on. Let me just start a little slide show, just because you can't have, let me see if you can see that yet. See, I'm gonna see if there we go. Hold on one second. Can anyone see that?
Yep, that's working.
Okay, perfect. Well, so this is in my younger years. This is a slide while I was the director of the Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory in San Diego, California, and I was there until 2012. I had, and I'll go into that, but I just wanted to kind of laugh about this picture here, just because that's, as you saw a little bit earlier with my face, it's a decade ago. I wish I looked that young now, but I just wanted to pop that in. A quick background about me. First of all, before I worked for the FBI, I was in the military in the counterintelligence interrogation with the 82nd Airborne here in the United States, and I worked a lot with the UK soldiers there, so had a great rapport with them as they came over and jumped out of perfectly good airplanes with me. and then I worked for 3Com Corporation out of the Bay Area, and they were the instruments in the Palm Pilot, if you recall, back in the day, and that Palm and all of that fun stuff, as it's formerly known as, and worked for them. And before I got into the FBI, when I got into the FBI, as you can imagine, similar to probably the law enforcement there in Scotland Yard and those in the UK, you have to kind of work your way through the ranks. And so I started off pulling duty, running down fugitives and bank robberies and things like that. And that was an interesting thing, pulling people over and doing things like that. But at the same time, I knew that my aspiration was in cyber, and this was back in the early 2000s, so 2001, 2002, and 3. And so really, computers were not even the laws in the United States and the crime back there in when it comes to cyber was really very in its infancy. We knew it was coming, but as you can imagine, just like normal law enforcement, we're always a step behind because of the laws, because of money, because of a lot of trainings and things like that. And so I kind of started delving in about 2003 or 4 into working at the San Diego Regional Computer Forensics Lab. I'll talk more about that in just a second, but that was me in a nutshell. I started basically looking at Windows machines, attending courses in Incase. This is where I learned Incase. OpenText, we own Incase, and so we provide Incase to classes, as you know, and Tableau products, like the TX1 and Ditto and all these other fun things that I used studying Windows, as well as going through several international courses. And IASIS. I'm sure you've heard of IASIS, certified in IASIS, and as well through the FBI's program. and then moved on to Mac investigations, as well as cell phone PDAs at the time, et cetera, et cetera. So I learned forensics from the beginning, the ones and the zeros, and understood where, all of those basic things that we need to know. And so as I moved through the ranks, I moved into operational management and then running teams, and then also as the director of or supervisor of the task force. I'll talk about that in a second. Later on in my career, after I had done that for a number of years, within the FBI, as you progress, you have the option to move to headquarters, to our Quantico headquarters out there in Quantico, Virginia, near DC. And so the biggest thing about that was the fact that I went and started to do more surreptitious work. In the United States, we have a terrorism clause, or ability to work on terrorism cases that allow us to do surreptitious work, whether it's inside of a location or whether it's through the wire. And so that basically terrorism clause allows us to do that. I'll talk about that more in the later on, but that was really, really fun. I kind of called it my Jason Bourne time frame in the FBI because we were doing some really, really cool stuff. And then I moved back to Vegas for a year or two to do just cyber crime investigations as a special agent, and then was recruited back to run a few teams back in the headquarters element doing the surreptitious stuff again. So that's me in a nutshell. I have worked digital forensic incident response, cyber, digital forensics for now approximately 19 years. And so I truly love this path, and I truly believe that schools and universities are where it's at, and what we, and what we are doing as far as that goes. I guess I should have moved that slide. I don't know if you guys could see that slide or not, but there's the slide I was just talking about. I apologize, to kind of show that. My post-FBI experience is basically with Palo Alto Networks, and I worked DIFR, Digital Forensic Incident Response, for a number of months, ransomware, intrusion, and such. And I really realized that I'm remembering that the stress level of that job was quite extreme. And after a while, I realized I did not want to do that anymore. So I moved over to OpenText, where I now deal, like with the educational side of digital forensics. So, and our educational program, I think, is phenomenal. So, and the discounts and the things that we give to academia is phenomenal. So, anyway, let me move to the next slide. What do you want to know? My question is to all of you, and I know that anytime during this, if you have a question, if you have a concern, if I didn't clarify something, please let me know. When I ask the question, what do you want to know? I'm referring to what do you want? What do you really need to know? What are you expected to know? And let me go through some of those things. This is just an old. I used to have this sitting at my desk, and truly, this represents the thoughts, right, of the old school computer hacker and the old school FBI agent. And this goes for folks that I've worked with MI5, MI6, the ASIO out of Australia, all of these spy agencies as well that help our countries. And basically, this is it. If you guys know about Johnny Dillinger and Al Capone, who were bank robbers and big time gangsters in the United States, this is like the epitome of, I really miss those days, because we can't see their faces anymore, right? We all know this. And so this was sitting at my desk for probably a decade to show you kind of like where we were back even more than a decade ago and how far we have to still go. So let me talk about quickly some of the quick stats. I know I'm not going to read all of these, but let me just touch on a couple. Number one, I just wanted to see right now in 2020, the average cost of a cyber attack is almost $4 million. Sometimes, and most of the time, this is per IBM, it takes over 200 days to detect this breach. That is amazing right now. As I worked with Palo Alto, There's a lot of tools out there, as you all probably know, endpoint, XDR, MDR, all of these tools that allow for the company and with a trained person with 24/7 monitoring or not to be able to monitor their endpoints and be able to see what's going on within their network as it learns it is absolutely pertinent to businesses today. And so this is where I talk about 4 million on average, which is absolutely insane, right? Also, I would just skip down to line number 3. There will be nearly 3.5 cybersecurity jobs waiting to be filled. 500,000 in the U.S., and I'm sure that it's close to that in the U.K. So I guess my point to you all is I don't know where you're at in your careers, but you definitely have an opportunity to help in this realm. And if I could talk at least one of you into coming over to the dark side, to the law enforcement side, or to the MI side, or to whatever you want to do, that would be my goal today, is to be able to talk about that. And the bottom one, and I just wanted to mention this, is the majority of the attacks are financial gain. For the companies, they claim to be actual companies. These are people who, as I worked with these ransomware companies or ransomware people, they literally get upset at me if I were to doubt that they were not going to return the files that they had stolen. They get really ticked off if you doubt the fact that they're not legitimate and that they're going to use your files later on to be able to ransom you or ransomware you, or to extract more money from you because they still own your data. They get it's amazing to me. I just wanted to go down to one of the closer to the bottom, where it states nearly 1 in 6,000 emails contain a suspicious link. I actually want to say that that could be even more so, as far as 2 or 3 in 6,000 nowadays, and that the malicious email attacks, which is a little right at about the third line there, are up 600%, fueled mainly by the pandemic. And you can see at the very bottom of this where the top 10 ransomware attacks of 2021. And just to project over to you guys, you've got the several, the Ireland Health Service, JBS, Kaseya, Accenture, some of these major ones that are in the UK or over in Europe that are happening all the time. And the famous ones, I just wanted to mention one or two. Number one, the Microsoft breach that was in 2020, 280 million records. The other one was the SolarWinds at the very bottom, massive damage to government systems. That right there was huge. I remember getting called in to ensure that we did not have SolarWinds installed in any of our FBI machines that we controlled in our network. And of course, the Zoom one in the middle there, which was a huge account credentials, 500,000 during the pandemic. And I mean, that's the bottom line, right? Is that you never know. I always say this, and everybody has heard this before, it's not a matter of if you're going to be attacked, it's a matter of when. And so as a digital forensic examiner, as a cyber or forensic expert, that's your job, is to help them not only on the backside, but also if you're within the company, if you're working on the civilian side or on the government side, is to be able to assist them. So how to get started on this, I like to just touch on this really briefly, is how to get started in this world that I got started in on the government side. First of all, most of our governmental agencies here allow for a few individuals to be part of the training. Normally they are in the FBI per se. 80% of our digital forensic examiners are not agents. They are professional support staff. And so they are IT professionals trained up and then hired on to be within the FBI. Like I said before, about 20% of those are agents who are cyber/digital forensic agents. And so they work usually 100% on digital forensics in a lab. There are a huge number of special agents who, like myself, who worked digital forensics and worked cybercrime. So you either work cyber investigations or you work digital forensics. We don't mix over. We don't cross over. Just because we firmly believe that a digital forensic examiner needs to be a third party, needs to be an unbiased party and not part of the investigative team when it comes to the investigation of that criminal, and that way they can be an unbiased third party. The same goes with when you're looking at this on the DIFR side, Digital Forensic Incident Response Teams, Palo Alto, Kroll, all of these big ones that do this, is the actual digital investigator, digital forensics person is not the lead. It's not the person who carries the relationship between the customer, the insurance, and the legal side. So that's an important thing to be able to remember. On the side of the law enforcement, I mean, we're still dealing with the evidence processing, understanding the standard operating procedures, understanding all of the laboratory environment that we have to follow, rules and regulations. But at the same time, nowadays on the digital forensic incident response side, a lot of this is done, excuse me, from afar, from remote. And so a lot of folks are being able to gain access. Again, if they have an endpoint tool, they can gain access from wherever they're at. And from the law enforcement side, however, we need to be on site. We need to be there to grab the evidence and ensure that has not been modified. But on the DIFR side, you have that option to work with your client and for them to provide you what they need. Nowadays, back in the day when I started doing digital forensic, there were no degrees. There were very few certificates. And nowadays, you all have that ability to gain a degree, or like you are now, a certificate program like you can now, and to be able to do that. I will leave my email if you want to talk to me after this, of course, about which ones I think are the best as far as certificates, whether it's SANS or something else. But you can see some of the things below too. Is there's certification programs within tools. As you know, EnCase has the ENCE. You have, I know that Access Data has the ACE. There's certain things that you can do there and get a certificate in those forensic tools as well, which you probably already know about, but please hit me up if you want any more information on those. So let me get to the meat of this, and I apologize for talking fast. There's so much information I would love to share with you all. And so again, reach out for me afterwards if you want to talk more or if you want more information. But so this is a picture of a good colleague of mine out in San Diego. His name's Tim. This is when we hit City Hall in San Diego, California, due to some City Hall councilmen that were involved in a scam with a strip club that was trying to, they were receiving funds. The city council representatives were receiving illegal funds in order for these strip clubs, which are all throughout the Western United States, to be able to have fully nude dancers instead of just partially nude. So this was a case where we actually rolled into City Hall. This was in the newspaper back in 2003 when I first started out with forensics. So I thought I'd throw him a bone and make sure he got some props. But I just wanted to mention that I'm going to talk about various cases, and within a task force, you see this quite a bit. In the task force I was in, which is kind of like a computer forensics lab, it's called, but it's a regional one. There are 18 of these across the United States, and they enable the fact that all of these agencies listed here can be part of this task force and receive the aid and assistance of the FBI and other agencies as we do so. So the ability to share and to learn from each other, as well as basically reinforce each other when it comes to training and knowledge, is absolutely paramount. And I know that there's things like that in the UK as well that help out. But if you can ever be part of a task force within law enforcement or part of a task force from the civilian side of the house, I highly recommend it for that purposes. But in order for me to work as an FBI agent, to work on a case that was from Chula Vista Police Department or Oceanside Police Department, or as such, down in the San Diego County, I had to be cross-sworn. So I was able to work their cases, and they were able to work our cases. This is a picture here of me in in our lab. As you can see, a little bit old school tools that we carried on site with us there on the desk, and the ability to have multiple exam stations running at the same time. So within the labs, we were allowed for investigative support, training, research, and quality control, and that allowed us to not only train ourselves and allow our own investigators and our own lab personnel to be trained, but we also trained all of the police force as well in order for them to understand better what they were seeing when they received a report, or if they wanted to look through things in their own investigations as we process them. So that was a good process there. So as you can see here on this slide really quickly, on the left side, you can see all of the things that are done to process, and this is when it comes to corporate DIFR, I like to call it, Digital Forensic Incident Response. You can see some of the companies on the right-hand side, which you may or may not want to work for when you're done with school, or perhaps you even work for them now as you're going through your program. And then on the left side, the things that happen within the DIFR are completely different than they are in law enforcement. Just a quick mention is every time you deal with a process on the corporate side when it comes to DIFR, you're dealing with not only the client, but also their legal representation and their insurance provider, as we have insurance for cyber crimes and cyber intrusions now. And so insurance has to be able to provide the financial support to the company that has been attacked, whether it's a business email compromise, a ransomware, or whatever. As they assemble the team, it's similar to a law enforcement side of the house, where in number 4 on the left there, you can see it says there's a director. That's what I did, which I led the teams. There's a technical lead, examiners. You have your XDR, MDR solutions people that are experts, and then you have meetings with them, helping them either rebuild their networks, reports, and testimony. And that part, the reports and the testimony, are very, very important, and that's also important on the law enforcement side as well. So I just wanted to throw that slide in there real quick to kind of help you see the difference between the law enforcement side and the DIFR side. As I mentioned earlier, in law enforcement, on-site is very, very important, and that's to maintain the integrity of the evidence, as you can imagine. But on the DIFR side, it's less and less needed, because usually we're just dealing with the person, the corporation, or the company that has been attacked. And so in this instance, that's a huge difference as well. So the other thing to remember as you go on site, as I talk about this really quickly, is that you never know what you're seeing. Take a good look at this picture, just a minute, just for a second, and if you take a really good close look at this, you can see that this box of wine could be something different. And so this box, actually, on one of the cases, you can see it's old, right? Look at the floppy drive there. That this is quite old. This was found when we were searching a house, and we were on site, and we found this box, and it was in a closet. And so we were like, what the? So anyways, luckily we were able to spot it, and as we opened it up, we were able to see a fully functional computer that we thought we needed to see it. At the top left there, you can see the hard drive. It's a big, huge IDE. I think it also has, no, maybe that was the floppy. The IDE is the drive stuck over on the right side with the Molex cables plugged into it. You can see the RAM and the motherboard taped to the bottom. Anyway, it was an interesting picture that I wanted to share with you, because you never know what the smoking gun may come to, or may come from. Pretty cool. Also, remember that even though a bad person may or may not just try to destroy their hard drive, in this instance, they tried to burn it to death. And they did a pretty good job of burning this thing up. However, we were still able to extract the hard drive and gain evidence, as you can see here. They did not destroy the hard drive. We were able to replace the circuit board, and which we just get a matching circuit board of this make and model of the Caviar 2120, and we were able to get this drive to spin using some methodology that we have in our lab, and be able to recover this data off of this. So a lot of people say, well, how can I really destroy a hard drive? Well, there are some agencies out there, if it's a super terrorism type case, which can recover ones and zeros from drives who have even been drilled. So my point being is like, unless it's completely shredded, degaussed and shredded, there's truly ways to be able to grab this data off of a hard drive. Fire, obviously, as you can see, did not do that, and drilling, it would be more difficult, and depending on the case and the amount of time and money that law enforcement or a digital forensic incident response team was willing to recover, depends. So it all depends. Any questions on that? I hear somebody go, Mike. Mike's go live right there. Okay. So let me tell you a couple war stories. And again, I'm going to, if you have any questions during these, please pop in and let me know. Um, and again, I'm talking fast just because there's so much that I wanted to share with you guys today. Um, wanted just to kind of give you a large gamut of cases that I worked, and to kind of give you the fact that there's so many different things to be able to investigate when it comes to digital forensics and cyber. One of them was one of my first cases was the gap tooth bandit. This was out of the San Diego area in California. The tools that I used were Encase as well as FTK. And right out of the bag, in this instance, the gap tooth bandit was a case where the bad person, the bad guy, was robbing or going into banks and stealing from them, obviously robbing them. And so as you see this, this piece of paper was what he used when he passed this note over to the teller, to our teller there. This was in 2008. And so this person named Michael Dickman was actually a professor. So you've got to really watch out for your professors there, your teachers there at the university. You never know. But this was a professor at National University. I actually used to teach at National University, which makes me a culprit as well, right? Anyway, one day he had done this many times throughout the area, and one day he was parked in a United States. We have a red zone parking, which is where no parking. I'm not sure what it is in the UK, but you can't park there. So he actually pulled up in his car, parked in the red zone outside of a bank he was robbing. And when the police showed up at the scene, I guess one of the tellers, one of the people at the bank, had triggered the alarm. And when they showed up at the scene, they noticed that his car was parked right in front in the red zone. And so they approached him. He wasn't armed. He did not have a gun. And they approached him and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he tried to back out and was like, "Oh, no, I don't, nothing, And he had walked out without money. And so he was doing basically a little bit of backing up. He had not really robbed the bank at this time. And so when they questioned him, he says, "Oh, no, yeah, you can look in my car and you can search my car." Well, when they searched his car, they realized that he had this piece of paper in the car. So this is an actual copy from the police department of the piece of paper, and you can see his instructions. So they're like, okay, how are we going to tie this piece of paper to him if he hasn't really robbed the bank yet? He was just going in. The police randomly, and I back up, the police had just randomly seen him parked there, and he hadn't really robbed the bank yet. So my story was a little bit wrong there. They hadn't triggered the alarm. The police had just so happened to pull up, and when he did this, they were able to grab the piece of paper, and so they were able to see this and note, hey, this guy obviously is doing something bad. So we're getting a warrant to search his house. When they searched his house, they were able to get the computer. And so within the print spooler file of Windows, probably Windows 95, back in the day, they were able to see that within the print spool folder, that print job was there, exactly what it was on the piece of paper. And so obviously at that point, he was found guilty and went back to and was jailed for quite a long time due to the fact that they were able to tie him to then many other jobs within the San Diego County area. Sorry, a little bit convoluted on that story, but you get the gist. Print spooler, you got to watch out for that. Okay, so this was a case too that we worked heavily out of San Diego. This was the kidnapping of Danielle Van Dam. She was last seen by her father in her bedroom in 2002, February 1st. And the next morning, as Danielle, her mother went in to get her, noticed that she was no longer in her room the next morning. And so the San Diego Police Department obviously submitted the Van Dam computer to the RCFL, the Regional Computer Forensics Lab, and we examined that for evidence of contact between the story was that there was a possible traveler in the area, and tried to find as much information as we could. Obviously, law enforcement officials interviewed all the neighbors the morning of the disappearance, and were able to find that there was actually a traveler there in the neighborhood that was named, last name was Westerfield. And he had a motorhome there, and he had gone and gotten his motorhome. He was a fairly close neighbor to the Von Doms, but he was traveled a lot. And so Westerfield had been questioned. He was a little hinked up. He was a little different when they interviewed him. And they also had some witnesses as he left. He had left that morning after the disappearance of the little one there. And so when they actually questioned the area that he had gone to, they questioned a casino, which is the Silver Strand beach area near a casino, and found out that he had been out there and had paid in advance for a 2-night stay. Anyway, a lot of questions, a lot of issues that came up during this investigation. But the beauty of this is that as we went on site and we were able to do imaging of all of his computers, we found that there were a lot of inconsistencies with his story, and we were able to get latent fingerprints off of the RV. I did not do that, but that's one of the things that we were able to take off of his RV. Compared to, that's Danielle's fingerprints. Her fingerprints were found in the RV, as well as blood on his jacket that was found, and we were able to match that as well. This is his motorhome, as you can see, and we were able to find fibers from Danielle's bedroom that compared to the RV as well. So a lot of these circumstantial, or not circumstantial, but evidence that was found just helped when we found evidence of child pornography, movies depicting child pornography, movies depicting the children being assaulted, and cartoons, et cetera, from Westerfield's computers. So we were able to basically, in a nutshell, just confirm that he had the propensity of looking at little kids. So with all of the evidence of the fingerprints, the blood, the computer stuff now, during the trial, we were able to be the examiner that went on trial was on the hot seat for more than a day, talking about all of the things and all of the websites that he visited, as well as the pictures and movies that we found on the computer. You can see some of those names of those exact files right there on that slide. That, by the way, this was a televised trial. Crazy, right? So the defense theory, they claim that Westerfield's son downloaded the pornography, but we disproved that. We were able to show that the internet history and the time frame would not have allowed for his son to be able to do that. So the traditional evidence, as I mentioned earlier, really, really screwed him. But the provided information that we were able to extract just kind of puts a nail in the coffin and solidifies his, like I said, propensity to be a child predator. Okay, so a big one that I ran for several years was the Randy Duke Cunningham case. In this case, he was a congressman in the San Diego area, and Randy was a famous fighter pilot, as you can see up in the top, during our Vietnam conflict back in the 70s. He was the only ace fighter pilot in our Vietnam conflict. I want to say the ace fighter pilot has to have 5 kills, something like five shoot downs, in order to get that award. So he was definitely a highly decorated war hero. As you can see here, he was a Navy pilot. He received the Navy Cross, Silver Stars, and Air Medals, as you can see. And so he was elected and was on part of the problem that he had was he was a member of and a senior member of the House of Appropriations Committee, which assigned defense appropriation contracts from the United States. Big business, right? Defense contractors. And so when he did this, he had a problem with receiving bribes. In this case, he received over 2.4 million in bribes. That's all. That's what we know of. He sold a home to a defense contractor at a hugely inflated price and evaded taxes. Obviously, not a very good representative of in our congressional house. He was obviously very corrupt, and he also had lots of friends like Brent Wilkes, defense contractor. Guess what? Brent Wilkes got a huge defense contract. Dusty Fogo, who was our CIA executive director, which is your number 3 person in the whole CIA, buddies with him. And you can see all of these people that were also named as co-conspirators in this fraud that he had. And it's pretty incredible, this case. I was able to do we were able to extract data from 9 different locations throughout the United States. At the time, in 2000, I think this was, I forget what year this was, 2008, that in excess of 14 terabytes. And I know terabytes now are just common in a laptop, but at that time it was huge amount of data. And we provided huge amounts of support to fight this. The guilty plea at the bottom there of these individuals was one of the biggest congressional cases that we've ever had, and that received a conviction. He resigned in 2005, so this was when I apologize, it was 2005, and he received, I believe he received 8 years. Yep, 8 years, and went to prison with a $1.8 million restitution. He just got out of prison now. He just barely got out of prison just a while back. I think he got out and was divorced. His wife divorced him. He was basically ruined. So that's one of the things I just wanted to mention real quick is that we just talked about, a bank robber. We just talked about a kidnapping, and we just talked about a congressional financial crime. Like, again, in law enforcement and in DIFR programs, you're going to see everything, and that's really cool. You may be able to focus in on one thing nowadays. Focusing in on cell phones is huge. Everybody's carrying their cell phones now. And so that's one of the things that I just wanted to mention to all of you is that if you have a specific specialty, you like Windows, you like Mac, you like Linux, those are things that you will constantly be able to use as you are working in the field and bettering yourself. So the last area, I have lots and lots of war stories, and I could go on forever. And if we have the time after this last part here, I have more war stories, but I wanted to open it up to Q&A for just a minute to make sure nobody had any questions. But one of the things I just wanted to talk about was our surreptitious entry. In the book by Kessler, it's called The Secrets of the FBI. And I'm obviously had a top secret clearance. I need to be careful what I say, especially since we're recording this. But as you can see, surreptitious is not a normal word for an English language that I found out. And so I have the actual definition there, stealth, basically. And so any of our terrorism cases, this group of individuals, of agents, was formed back when we had all of our Al Capones and our gang related matters when it was Chicago and New York. And so these were the guys that went in and installed listening devices inside of bars, restaurants, and homes, not only in the telephones, but also in the walls, cameras, those types of things. So that's our surreptitious program. However, in the cyber side of the house, we also assist with that now. We also are the ones that help with those surreptitious entries, as we call them. And so the first, even if you get on Amazon or something like that, they will give you the first couple of chapters of this book, The Secrets of the FBI. And I challenge you to get on there and take a look at that and read those first couple of chapters, because it's very detailed. It's kind of crazy that they allowed this for Kessler to interview, Ronald Kessler to interview agents who worked in this field. This book was actually put out right before I started with our tactical operations group. And I was actually shocked that they allowed for all of this information to be put out there to the world. But please feel free to look into that. So what I'm going to do is just for a few minutes talk about carefully some of the things that there's this surreptitious group can do. So basically, this is a surreptitious, super secret unit. Kind of sounds funny when I say it, but we were, I'm not anymore. We were break-in artists. These were court-authorized FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. We used that, and they were it's a court within the United States, totally legal, very, very hard to get a FISA warrant. Most agents shy away from it because it's so hard. It's looked at so carefully, as you can imagine. And so if you look in the papers over the last few years, you'll see how every few years as it's reviewed, there's more problems, and so there's more red tape that we have to go through in order to get these. So we're basically court-authorized burglaries within homes, offices, embassies, where we plant hidden microphones, video cameras, and snoop into computers. Like I said earlier, it's mainly terrorism, but there are targets and mafia figures, corrupt members of Congress, spies from other countries, mainly officers of Russia, China, and things like that. And I say that, and again, I'm reading this from the book that he said, just to clarify. Also, many, many cases that I worked on in order to do this. And basically, agents decide the best time for entry would be midnight. So a lot of jobs at night. And a lot of times they had to be very careful about when to do this based on the pattern of life, which is the area surrounding the buildings or the locations, making sure that even the garbage man was not tipped off. Maybe a bar across the street. So in a specific issue that they had, where there was a bar right across the street from a warehouse or from a business, and so what they did was they rented a bus or got a bus from the city bus company, and during the operation, when they entered into the building, they had the bus pull up in front of the bar and park for 5 minutes while they made entry into the location, into the business that they wanted to get into, and plant things and grab things that they needed to. And then after a few hours, when they were done, the bus came back around and to pick them up. However, there was a vagabond, there was a bum on the street, and he got on the bus, and all the agents got on the bus. They didn't look like agents. They had on some regular street clothes. They looked like they just came from the bar. They had some tool bags and such, but this bad guy got on the bus and looked around at all these agents and didn't know that nobody showed their guns or anything like that. And he quickly got off at the next exit, realizing something was going on when there was only like 10 guys on this bus, and they all looked like they were in good shape and ready to do business. So it was pretty funny that happened, and he got off pretty quick. Ding, ding, he hit the... So kind of an interesting concept. I do believe that they had some radio gear. He might have seen a gun. Who knows? But he got off the bus really quick. And one of our guys did have a shotgun that was able to be viewed. So he got off really, really quick. Of course, as the technology gets greater, those types of tools that are used within the FBI and within other agencies that do this, within even your country, those ways of being able to grab information, whether it's video, microphones, and or computers, are not only things that are extracted, but also things that may be implanted. As you know, too, there's a lot of malware out there, and that malware that's being pushed onto people's computers is by a lot of foreign nations to try to extract data from you. And just think about that when it comes to the spying from within countries trying to get that information. So malware is definitely something to really look out for. As far as the way in which we work, and it comes down to it, this team that I worked on supports all of the field offices within the United States, as well as we've supported teams within other countries as well with their legal authority. We trained with all of the other agencies within your country, as well as many other of our Five Eyes, right? Australia, New Zealand, us, Canada. Great opportunity to meet and to work hand in hand with a lot of other countries to be able to work together as one. All of us had top secret clearances. and all of us were able to look for, as teams, have individuals with relevant experience in undercover work. Um, Whether it's the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, the color of your skin, the accent that you may have, your past history, your things like that were all important to be able to have deep aliases within this. Um, and of course, as we were always trying to be cautious, we did not work in a facility that was labeled FBI, and we were able to, and we dressed like normal civilians all the time. We had backstories, IDs, all that fun stuff when it comes to undercover work. And so we also had different uniforms and things to be able to help us get into locations. Uniforms that may be for a garbage sanitation department, a cell phone company, something like that that rang a bell that people saw. Oh yeah, they're always around here. As we were able to not only surveil but also make entry into locations, and the ability to make a truck or a van or something look like it's from that company as well. Um, we couldn't mimic or impersonate clergy or journalists or anything like that, is against the law, but we were able to be delivery people and those types of things as well. So there were different groups within our team, and I'll finish with this part. There are different groups within our team that would be part of, let's say, electronics team, a team that dealt with perhaps garage doors, alarms. There was teams that dealt with the mechanical, which may be doors, safes, locks. Obviously, a group that does the searching and ensures that nothing is moved. And then there's my team, which dealt with the forensics, the cyber, and that such. So there was multiple teams that all had their own mission. I mentioned that just because it's a highly skilled set to have. Hopefully, maybe one of you is like, that is super cool, and I want to do that. I want to work for MI5, 6, whomever. I want to work for them in order to be able to do some of this cool stuff, and be able to, do the Jason Bourne stuff. And I'll tell you what, it was the best job that I've ever worked in. I can't believe they actually paid me. It was so fun. There were some stressful times. There was a time where I had a laptop in a case out in Anaheim, California, near Disneyland, and the subject was in Disneyland with his family. Our surveillance team was in Disneyland on them, and as we were working on their computers in their hotel room, we got a late call from them, and we had their laptops all spread out open to be able to access their data. And so in fact, it got so close to being caught that the agents that were on the bus, the agents that were in the hotel room, the hotel lobby, hit all the buttons on the hotel elevator all the way up. And then when the bad guys were coming in to try to get on an elevator, it took forever to get back down. And so we were able to get a couple of minutes on that and be able to literally put the last screw in the laptop, hand it over to the search team, and at that point, be able to depart the room and go down the stairwell. Literally, as our door shut, they turn the corner to their hotel room. So it could be a little stressful. It could be a little stressful, especially since a lot of times we're dealing with foreign intelligence officers from other countries that are trained in espionage and in setting traps, whether it's a piece of hair under a screw or a piece of tape, something hidden where they know that they have not that they have been gotten into, if that makes sense, a door or anything. One time we had an issue with a cat. We were inside of a location and we saw a black cat. We had no idea from our intelligence that we had a cat issue or a cat that was in there. So of course, a lot of us, I have a cat allergy, so that's not good. And so I didn't take any meds on that. But we got in there and all of a sudden we were halfway through doing our jobs and we couldn't find the cat. And so everybody freaked out thinking that the cat got out the door. So we had all of our surveillance teams circling the neighborhoods trying to find this stupid cat to bring it back in. Well, they found a cat and they thought it was it, and they brought it into the house. And unbeknownst to us, there was a slight opening of one of the windows way upstairs in a corner that the original cat had escaped in. And so all of a sudden, when the bad guys came home later in the morning, the next day, they came in and not only did they have their cat that had come back in overnight after we left, but then they had another cat in their house. So we were able to overhear that with the recordings and the listening devices that we had in the house. But kind of funny, and they just played it off like they were like, "Huh, I wonder if he just followed our cat back in the house." It's never happened before, but sometimes things like that happen. So I just wanted to mention that just a couple of quick stories from our surreptitious entries and the fun things that we're able to do on that. Before I get into any other like questions or just maybe other war stories, depending on the time, I think we're starting to run out. This is my information here. The Infuse just happened just a few weeks ago, and I hope if you haven't already, if you didn't attend that, there's quite a few in recordings that you can go back and listen to, whether it's forensic, cyber, endpoints, XDR, MDR type information that you can go to. You can also see my email address at the bottom for my professional email and hit me up at any time. So I just wanted to, I think it's 9, almost, for me, it's almost 5 to the hour, to the top of the hour. So I just wanted to open it up for questions in case any of you had questions for me before I talk back to Phil there. If anybody has questions, I'm more than happy to answer those for you.
Thanks, Craig. Really interesting talk. Absolutely loved it. We've had a couple of questions. There's a question on the chat just come in. What were the highs and lows of working within law enforcement?
So as you can imagine, the highs are the arrests, the ability to do what I just talked about in that fun job of getting the job, finding the bad person, getting them arrested, having them go to jail. The highs too is that they pay for your training. They continually train you to progress. As you know, every 18 months, cyber jumps another doubles in size of the hard drives and the RAM and everything. So that's a huge thing right there, is the perk of training, the camaraderie, the brother sisterhood that you have. They have your back, you have theirs. It's almost like a modified gang in a sense, right? It's definitely solid. And the fact that you're able to, and also you have a solid job. I mean, it's really hard to get fired. You know that you have a job tomorrow. And so the lows are that it's usually a slow moving machine. It's a large machine. It takes a lot of time to make a big change in whether it's law, whether it's procedure. There's a lot of political movement that has to happen. And so that's probably the con that I can see.
Excellent, thank you. Another question that's just come in. John asks, do you see criminals more aware of using privacy tools such as VPN, incognito mode, etc.? And if so, how much more complex does that make your investigations?
It is absolutely becoming more and more prevalent, using the web tools that are out there to hide VPNs, of course. They're jumping. Sometimes they are. Most all of your, how would I put it? You're really smart guys, and most of those smart people are out of countries where the frustrating part is, right, as we see their VPN, or we see that they were using this web browser that's hiding, whether it's privacy mode, and a lot of tools out there are now, you use Chrome in privacy mode. Believe me, there's still ways to grab that information, as you guys know. And even if we're data carving, right, Slack space or file Slack or anything like that, sometimes we're getting that as well. But there's a lot of tools to help us with that. It does make it a lot harder, as you mentioned. And also sometimes it is impossible based on their IP traffic, because a lot of times they're using VPNs who are outside of this country. And then we have to try to use our political clout with that country in order to get that company to give us the information we need in order to track the next layer. So it's usually okay, I always call cyber agents, especially international stuff, that all they're doing is IP address chasing. One IP subpoena. Oh, we found this, another IP subpoena. another IP subpoena. And then a lot of times, unfortunately, as I work some of the national security cases that were in other countries who are not playing baseball with us, that we run into okay, we know who the bad guys are, but we can't get them to come to the United States, and or we can't go any time further. And so what we do is we indict them, and so they have warrants out for their arrest if they were ever to come to, and we put a Interpol notice out, right? So if they were ever to come or be pulled over or whatever in any of our foreign friendly countries or within our United States, they would be arrested and then extradited. So yes, it is frustrating, but they are getting smarter and smarter, and the tools are becoming easier and easier to use. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Thomas asks, what measures do you typically employ to comply with Privacy Shield requirements?
Yeah, so the Privacy Shield, and you're referring to the principles of the Privacy Shield. What can you clarify that? The EU Privacy Shield, is that what you're talking about?
He says yes.
Yes. So
yeah.
The EU specifically is one of those things where it is very difficult. Now, in order for us to comply with anything that from anywhere in Europe or the UK, anyone that follows the Privacy Shield, we have to make sure that we work hand in hand with that country. So for example, if the United States, if I want to see a IP address or see personal PII, personal identify information, then I have to get our legal people involved with the legal people, let's say, of the UK, and then ensure that we're providing the legal authority to them in order for them to then release that to us. And so it takes another step. It's great. It's a great thing. I get privacy is super important. I get that 100%. And so we have to comply with it all the way. Now, if you're referring back to the time when, the NSA is collecting data on foreign phone calls and all this other stuff, I am here to tell you that there is no way in the world that we're able to see and look at and see all this data. Now, the FBI doesn't do that. That was the NSA back when we had that whole WikiLeaks issue a number of years ago. And even if the data, and again, I don't agree that it should have been collected, but it was basically collected and stored in case of a terrorist issue where they could do a data search of it. That no longer is there that I know of, and I don't have access to that and knowledge. But I do personally think that privacy is important. I do also think that our laws are still behind the curve, and that our laws to be able to protect privacy and or to access it need to be bettered. So that like the EU is doing right now. I mean, and that's a great law to have.
Thank you, Craig.
You betcha.
Excellent, thank you. If I was to ask just one more question, if that's all right. So for students on the call thinking that they might be interested in a career in digital forensics then, and they've done a little bit of NCASE and FTK, autopsy, these kind of tools during their undergraduate studies, is there any piece of advice, just thinking, what would it be that would help them secure that role in digital forensics, do you think?
That's a great question. I honestly think now, as we move further along in the technology, that there's a couple of things that are really, really important right now. Number one is the cell phone forensics. If they can gain more and glean more information, obviously you need to know the basics of forensics right now. Understand that you don't want to just learn a push button forensic tool. Whether you're in DIFR on the civilian side or you're in law enforcement, you need to truly understand the forensics that you're conducting. You're not going to have the ability to call up a forensic tool manufacturer and say, can you come testify about how this works? You need to understand it from the grassroots all the way up. So focus in on a tool that you understand, that you can learn from, that helps you understand. I know that NCASE does that. I'm not trying to sell you NCASE, but I know that it does that. That's what I learned on, right? Don't just go for a push button forensic tool. That's my number one thing. Number two is if you can really, really get into cell phones and either get a certificate in cell phones or really focus in on cell phones, they are hiring like crazy people that know cell phones well and can really, really do cell phone forensics. And the third is you're going to see forensics going more and more into the cloud, where people are placing all of their data from their company, from their security, and even all our digital forensics labs are going to cloud-based because it's less expensive, it's more secure. Well, I say that in quotes, and it because who owns the cloud, right? Right. I don't want to even get that's a whole nother topic. And you're able to use Incase does cloud forensics. A lot of tools do cloud forensics. I'm not saying that Incase is the only one, the best one, or anything, but you need to understand cloud forensics as well. Those are the three things that I would really push out to you. So understand the basics, understand cell phones, and understand the cloud and the cloud forensics. And that's probably the three that I would go for. And I really hope that at least one of you, I know there's a handful of you on the call and others that will listen later, but that one of you at least piques your interest to do some really, really cool stuff and do some really cool cases. I love this. That's why I'm still doing it.
Excellent. I think that's really, really, really valuable advice there at the end. So that's fantastic. Thank you. We are just over time. So thank you ever so much, Craig, for being able to join us today, all the way from Vegas.
Yeah.
Do enjoy the rest of your day over there as we start to wrap up ours. But it's been an absolute pleasure for you to join us today. We look forward to being able to welcome you back again in the near future.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you all.
Thanks for now.
Have a great day. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Bye now.
Yeah, bye everyone.